And there is no samples. Okay, I think we're all ready to go then.
Okay.
So we'll call the regular meeting of the Redondo Beach Budget and Finance Commission for August 13th, 2020 to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Conroy,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Present.
Commissioner Wynn,
Here.
Commissioner Samples,
Here.
Commissioner Woodham,
Here.
and Chairman Solomon.
Here. Let's all rise and we have our flag to salute, and I will begin. Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We've got our order of agenda next, asking if the commissioners would be okay with us moving J2, which is the city treasurer's report, to go first. It's our biggest report and the most material. So if we could move that to the front, if anybody objects to that.
Chairman Solomon, I just need to know what level that you want to put it in front of.
We would just switch J1 and J2.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Sorry, Caitlin. Does anybody have an objection? Do we have a second for that?
Second.
And then we'll do a roll call. All those in favor of changing order of agenda, Commissioner Samples,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham,
Aye.
Commissioner Chun,
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Conroy.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Next up would be any blue folder items. I don't believe that we have any blue folder, do we?
No blue folder items.
No blue folder items for today, which brings us to the items on our consent calendar. We have 3 items on our consent calendar: the approval of the affidavit of posting, the approval of the minutes from the regular Budget and Finance Commission meeting, and receive and file of the commission's tentative calendar for the remainder of 2020. Do we have a motion to approve the affidavit of posting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Eleanor, are we able to approve all of these at once, or must we do them one at a time?
No, actually, you can approve them all at one time. There's that one sentence right there that you can approve the following motion all at one time.
All right, let's see if anybody has any changes from the minutes of the last meeting, any changes, addendums, or questions regarding the minutes from the meeting of June 11th. Seeing no takers. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding the receive and file of the tentative calendar for the remainder of 2020? Also seeing no takers. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. I'll do a roll call vote, please. Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Commissioner Chun?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham? And Commissioner Samples?
And also, I just wanted to state that we have no public comments related to consent calendar.
Thank you. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for the reminder. Which would bring us to public participation on non-agenda items. This is intended to provide members of the public an opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda tonight. Each speaker is limited. The section is limited. Each speaker is afforded 3 minutes to address the commission, and you're permitted to speak only once. Do we have any non-agenda public participation tonight?
We have none, and we have none from Zoom who are wanting to participate, and also we have no comments, no e-comments. Thank you.
Okay. And then that would take care of H1 for e-comments from the public.
Correct.
Which brings us to items continued from the previous agenda, which we do not have tonight. Which brings us to our regular agenda. In this case, we're going to begin with the city treasurer's quarterly report with Treasurer Steve Deals and Assistant Deputy Treasurer Nilesh Mehta. I will not speak for anybody but myself in saying that I didn't get a packet with the agenda with all of the slides and materials. So while we're going through it, if we could do it deliberately to give, if there's anybody else in the same boat as me, an opportunity to pause and ask a question, please. So I turn it over to Steve.
Before I get started, I just want to make sure everyone can view this on their screen.
Yes.
Okay.
All good.
Hi, and Steve Deals here too, so I am present, although I don't have a view of the screen. But I could, while you're talking, Nilesh, send an email copy of the report over to Mr. Solomon, but he would have to maybe send me his email. Can you send me your email address?
Thank you, Steve. I've got the agenda, so I'm good with that. It just my screen has shared with the report, so I'll be able to view along there as well. But thank you for the offer.
Oh, I misunderstood. Okay. All right. So we have before you the fourth quarter report. Nilesh will give you run through the slides. I'm here to provide any potential color commentary. Of course, the safety, liquidity, and yield are our priorities in that order. This is a fourth quarter, so you see the entire fiscal year presented before you. Some highlights are, we projected $825,000 in revenue for the general fund in interest income, and we delivered $860,000 plus, so that was positive, with another 56% going to the other funds. And then we've got some interesting illustrations in this particular report of the volatility of the total return measurement that we can point out if that's important. And then with that, I will hand it over to Nilesh, and I'll be on standby.
Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, we're going to go over a quick synopsis of the portfolio summary, investment reporting guidelines. The admin report also contains the quarterly report from FTN Main Street, and that has the portfolio summary, investment policy, investment activity, and the economic and market update. So this PowerPoint presentation will go over the investment reporting objectives, policy compliance, quarterly performance, fiscal impact, book return and total return, month-end portfolio book yield, maturity distribution, sector allocation, historical book value, an introduction to cash flow analysis, and trading activity for the quarter. As Steve mentioned, key investment objectives, safety, liquidity, yield. Our goal is to protect principal first, provide necessity liquidity to cover both ongoing and unexpected cash flows, and maximize earnings, recognizing need for safety and liquidity and subject to restrictions specified by state statutes and the local governing body. As we have gone over, these are the investment reporting guidelines from CMTA. And here's a review of our policy compliance. As you can see on the right side column, we have been in compliance with our investment policy as it has been stated. Just a quick synopsis, weighted average maturity, no greater than 2.5 years. We were in compliance by being at 1.72 years. Liquidity, at least 25% of the portfolio must have maturities of 1 year or less. We had 40% of our portfolio in maturities of 1 year or less. So as you can see, we are in compliance for the investment policy. Here is a...
Also, let me jump back to safety, liquidity, and yield, if that's all right. So, since we're looking at the whole year, we're looking at safety first, which means did we cost the city anything in principal? Was there any principal lost? And the answer is no. So the city's investment portfolio was managed safely. And in terms of liquidity, virtually 100% of the city's liquidity requirements were served. So as spending was required, we had the revenue and the liquidity to service the city's spending requirements. And then yield is the discussion we'll have, of course, regarding the interest earned. And I already mentioned that we did hit our interest rate target. So just want to make sure I hit those safety, liquidity, yield points.
So this is our annual performance broken down by quarters. As you can see, here's fourth quarter. We had just over $9 million in cash in banks and money markets, $22 million in LAIF, just over $38 million in federal agencies, almost $21 million in corporate medium-term notes, almost $3 million in bank CDs, $10 million in treasuries. Total investment portfolio, just over $94 million. As I mentioned, weighted average maturity 1.72. Portfolio effective rate of return 2.22. The LAIF yield for the quarter has dropped and it is at 1.2. So as you can see, the LAIF yield has been dropping as rates have continued to drop. It's a falling interest rate environment. So yield on the benchmark is 2.02%. As Steve mentioned, the interest earned year to date for the entire portfolio, almost 2 million. So 1,965,199. From that, we contribute 44% into the general fund. So the contribution is 864,688.
Milish, the interest rate, okay, there it is. I was just looking to see what the interest rate was in the second quarter.
In the second quarter. So right here.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
And this is a comparison of the 18-19 fiscal year. As you can see, the interest earned was slightly more or slightly less. So we did do slightly better. Fiscal impact, as I mentioned, 1.9 million for the entire portfolio was the interest earned. 44% of that was contributed to the general fund. We had budgeted 825,000 to be contributed to the general fund. So we did beat that. Here's a quick synopsis of our book return versus the benchmark. As you can see, the fiscal year to date, portfolio earned 2.26% versus the benchmark 0.02%. So we beat the benchmark by 0.024%.
Could I interrupt with a quick question? This is Jerry. I was muted, so I couldn't ask it. Back on the slide where you were showing the returns for each quarter, the interest earned. I'm sorry. Interest earned year to date. I thought there was interest earned for the quarter, and I had a question as to why it varied so much. But I understand now. It's year to date, so it's cumulative. Disregard that question. Sorry.
Moving on to the total return slide. Here we show that the portfolio year-to-date interest earned was 4.41%. Keep in mind that this is this includes the unrealized gains and losses for the fiscal year. So this chart shows the unrealized gain because that is what total return is compared to the book return. So the book return is the 2.26%.
Okay, so this is something I wanted to comment on. Is this the one that's the page 16
Correct.
of the FTN report? Okay, cool.
This page
All right,
16
so-
on the FHN report.
Yeah, oh, FHN, sorry, I forgot, yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is super interesting because if you look at the 1 month and the 3 month bar chart there, and you can see that the dark blue is the portfolio and the benchmark is the light blue. So we're at the 1 month level, we were ahead of the benchmark. And then at the 3 month level, we're way ahead of the benchmark. And then you go to look at fiscal year to date, and we're below the benchmark. So this was, I think, a great example of demonstrating the volatility of the total return measurement. So what happened in the 3 months, that had to do with our corporate notes performance. And you might recall that during that period, that was the peak of the depths of the COVID crisis, and stocks plummeted and corporations were in trouble. There appeared to be credit risk there. And so the corporate treasuries were not performing. And then the Fed stepped in and they bought corporate bonds, which were unprecedented. And then look what that did to our portfolio relative to the benchmark. It shot up. And, you know, things settled down after that. But I just thought that's a really, really cool example of what can happen. And then for the fiscal year to date, you can see that our, let's see, the light blue, yeah, the benchmark is exceeding the portfolio. And so in response to COVID and the anticipation of lower revenues, we've got to keep more money in liquidity. So what we've done is put more money into LAIF and lowered our duration, and therefore we have, I think, a temporary performance below the market rate, except that, again, these are measurements of unrealized gains and unrealized losses. So when you look at the fiscal year-to-date portfolio earnings at 4.4%, or the benchmark at 4.5%, nearly 4.6, those are really phantom returns because we never received that. So the actual returns are reflected in the book return numbers. But I thought this was a good, cool overall chart to look at. So we included it.
Steve, quick question, please. It's Eugene Solomon. That I saw that we reduced our positions a little bit in corporate notes. And did that get moved into the LAIF for liquidity? Is that what the idea was behind that?
No, we didn't sell any positions. They just matured. I mean, my recollection is they just matured. So yeah, that money goes into our regular cash flow.
Reducing the position meaning a total reflection of the overall percentage beforehand.
Correct. We didn't do any active investing to sell corporates.
Right.
To increase our liquidity. We did not do that.
Right. And then this is through June 30th, correct?
Yes, it is through June 30th.
The end of the fiscal year, correct.
Great, thanks.
Steve, Commissioner Conroy, quick question. Do you still anticipate the need for more liquidity going forward, or are you going to readjust and get us back more in line, hopefully, with the benchmark?
Well, we'll be in line with the benchmark as things settle out just naturally, because the benchmark is selected to be something that closely represents what we do, and what we do closely represents the benchmark. So it'll align as it has in the book returns. So where you're going to see the variations are always going to be in the total return, which is the market return. And those are basically the phantom rate. So I would definitely expect to see some variation either in our favor or in our disfavor with respect to the market rates, because there's so much volatility out there. We don't know what's going on. The big issue, that's a market rate. That's all external, and it really is not a factor in our investment policy. We report on it. The main thing is that we deliver to the city a fixed rate of return that is budgetable and that it's reliable. And so we can plan on spending that money and that money is available when it's time to spend. So that's the nature of fixed rate investing. What the big issue facing the city is the lower revenues coming in. So as revenues coming in and our spending remains, close to our level of revenues, we're likely to see an overall drop in the portfolio. So we're going to have less money invested overall, and then we'll have to continue to maintain our liquidity requirements. So it's a little more answer than you were probably expecting, but we're always watching liquidity, and in fact, later in this report, Nilesh has something new, so you can see the spending patterns, which is super interesting in the city.
No, that was actually a good answer. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that with decreased revenues and the need to have liquid funds, that we will probably continue our current trend of having more liquidity in our investments, which everything else being the same has a slightly lower return.
Yes, and so in investing gibberish, we lowered our duration slightly, and therefore longer durations get higher returns, shorter durations lower returns. But yeah, that's correct. You got it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chan here. Correction on what Steve said. It depends on which way interest rates move in terms of the return. So that's just for clarification on that.
Yes. In general, longer duration, higher rates, but not always.
Oh, yes. And our position, that is correct. Yep. I understand that completely. But the bigger deal is, we're fixated on the investment portfolio. That's what we're presenting on. But the big issue is the city's basic finances. It's the inflows and outflows that we have to be really concerned about. So, it's going to be safety, liquidity, and then yield last. So we've got to make sure that we have the money to spend when it's time to spend it, and do our best to earn what we can and maximize the portfolio if possible. But maximizing the portfolio is the total balance of the portfolio, and that's a function of the city's spending patterns and policies. And that's really out of the realm of the Treasurer's office because that's all policy.
So Steve, it's Eugene. One of the things that the staff has told us in reviewing the budget when we were going through that is the property taxes are a lagging indicator, and we might expect to take a hit there. Are they providing, or are we looking at projections there about a lag in revenues, or is that something that we'll see as it comes in and handle it as it comes in?
My understanding is the lag is more in sales type revenues and not in property tax. So if the property tax is one of the more stable things we get, and that's pretty well sustainable. And we're looking at it ahead of time. In fact, before you got the budget, that's what we were looking at. But what we've done, because now that cash flows are so important because we have reduced revenues, we have to make sure we got the money available to pay the bills. We are looking more specifically at our cash flows so that if we do have a reduction in, like an unexpected reduction in property tax revenues, we can make some adjustments and report as quickly as possible to finance and also to the city council if they need to make any policy adjustments.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions for this slide?
Yeah, quick question. We talked about safety. Steve, how do you and the manager go about assessing the risk in the corporate medium-term notes? I mean, these are short-term; they're A-rated and above, but that varies over time. How do they look at that and determine whether it's too risky and they want to pull back, or risk is not an issue and they're comfortable going up to the max in corporate notes?
Well, there's credit risk and interest rate risk. What you're referring to is credit risk. So will these companies have the ability to pay on their bonds? And we're always looking, literally weekly, we get reports on the status of our investments and what their credit ratings are. And if they drop below what our allowed requirement is, we can sell them anyway, but we can, at that point, we look to potentially selling them. There have been times where we hung on to them a little bit, and as recently as just a few months ago, we did sell one of our lower rated notes. The credit rating had dropped, and we went ahead and sold it. So we keep an eye on it.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on to the
Commissioner
go ahead.
Chan here, sorry. So along those lines, Treasurer Deals, you mentioned that something was sold, but looking on the report, it only shows purchases and redemptions on one slide.
Yeah.
So,
I said a few months ago. It wasn't in this quarter. If it doesn't show up there, then it was a few months back.
okay, all right. So
Yeah.
it shows up on the regular transaction page. Okay, thank you.
And then we have.
Yeah, no, well, it
Not just
would have showed up in the last quarterly report. You would have seen that one. I'm just using that as an example of when we liquidated a security whose rating had dropped.
Okay, so have we liquidated any other notes or securities for the same reason?
Not recently, no. No.
Is that within the last 6 months, or is recently the last year?
No, yeah, it was, I believe, the last 6 months. We can look it up and send it to you guys all by email as the example if you want to know what it was. But we presented to you on it at the time. So it was there. I had the choice of liquidating or not, and we were also at that time. I think our policy requirement for liquidity or WHAM, one of those, was potentially going to be out of compliance, and by selling that, it was actually, but it was even within just a couple months of maturity at the time, ironically, and we sold it a little bit early. And but I can send you that one.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I have a question. Going back to the portfolio charts, I see in prior years contributions to the general fund were all at 66%. Why is it 44% in the current fiscal year?
so I can answer that. So,
Very, very good.
yeah. So basically, what had happened was we had thought that the percentage was a 66%. So but in fact, it was a 44% contribution. So starting with this fiscal year, I had made the change on the performance. I had made the change right here. So 1920, it showed a general fund contribution of 44%, and that's the correct number. So this
Prior years
we
actually
recalibrate.
44%.
No. Let me explain. We get that number from finance, and they gave us the 66% number. Then we recalibrated, and they gave us the 44% number, and that's why. So we worked off the numbers they gave us, frankly.
Were they giving us incorrect numbers previously? I still don't understand.
I can't.
So,
No, that's the number they were using. They were using 66%, and then we recalibrated, and they gave us 44%. So that's the number we're reporting.
Steve, if I could interject. So the 66%, we hadn't been asked about it in a really long time, so I believe that was quite an old number. The 44% it's just an estimate. That is how much of the investment earnings the general fund received in the prior year. When we allocate, we don't allocate exactly 44%. We allocate based on the cash balances in each fund. And so during the prior fiscal year, which 44% would be 18-19, it was 44%. So we'll take a look at it each year. And so it's kind of a lag. It's what actually happened in the prior fiscal year. And then that gives us an estimate for the current year.
Marnie, I have a question along that line. It would be interesting to know sort of annually, more often than that, if possible, but at least annually, roughly who the owners are in that investment fund. For instance, the 94 million at the end of June. It'd be interesting to know not only the general fund, but what other funds and other entities have ownership in that. Is that something that's extremely difficult to calculate like that, or is it something that you have data captured and could add a sheet? I think a slide showing that at least annually would be worthwhile.
I think you used to show cash balances a while ago, Neil. Do you know if it's still in your report?
We have cash balances of accounts, but not of fund balances. I think he's asking about fund balances.
Yeah, he is asking fund. So it's something very attainable. Like I said, that's how we're allocating the interest, is by the cash balances. So as soon as we reconcile cash for the previous month, we know what the cash balance was.
Well, again,
so yes, but the answer is yes, we could do that. We can report on fund balances. It's even a feature in Munis. Like, I don't know if the standard report, how accurate it is, but that's something we could do. I mean, you're going to see, we've been working on something else, which is cash flows. You'll see that's coming up. But if you want something beyond that, with respect to the balances of the funds, we can do that. But we're going to dial in cash flows first, and then we can report to you on fund balances.
Okay.
Any other questions for now?
Sorry, could I interrupt? Is Mr. Samples okay?
Mel?
Does anyone have his cell phone number?
Oh,
Okay, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Any other questions for right now then, please? Okay, please go ahead, Noah.
So moving on to the month-end portfolio book yield. This is just a chart that goes over how the book yield has performed over the fiscal year. We're currently
We're not seeing your screen anymore, Neil.
Oh, you're not. Oh, I don't know what happened. Sorry. How about now? How about now? Good.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's back.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. So this is a chart that just goes over the monthly portfolio book yield over the last fiscal year, and as you can see, at the end of June, we were at just above 2%. This is a maturity distribution for the quarter. As I mentioned, 40% in maturities of less than a year. Sector allocation, we have just about 40% in agencies, 10% in treasuries, 3% in CDs, 23% in LAIF, and 22% in corporate notes. Historical book value. This slide goes over a chart of the book value over the last, I believe, 10 years. So interesting note is fiscal year 2019, at the end of June, we were at 101 million at the end of the fiscal year, and we're currently at 95.5 million. And then this chart sort of is the introduction to cash flows that we've been working on for the city. This is just a very basic start that we started. So this the orange is the expenses and the green is the revenues, and it's broken down by month. So as you can see, our expenses are slightly more than the revenues for some of the months. So it's very important that we keep a closer eye on the cash flow. So here's a little bit broken down, monthly revenues versus expenses. So I've broken it down by the revenues at the top and then expenses at the bottom. And then the final line here is revenues less expenses. So it's month by month.
Does the personnel expense include contributions to CalPERS in that number?
Personnel expense, I believe, yes. Marnie, can you confirm that?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
And those all happened in the March. Why do we have the huge spike in March?
There's two pieces of the PERS contributions. The normal cost is paid every pay period, which is every 2 weeks. And then in July, in order to take advantage of a prepayment discount, we make our unfunded liability payment.
In March.
No, July.
Okay. So again, why do we see the large spike in expenses and revenues in March?
So I can answer for the revenue side. This chart here is the inflows by month. So in March, taxes was just over 41 million. And then the following slide, the breakdown of the different taxes that we received. So property tax, 15 million. So if you compare that to the other months, significantly more, as well as sales tax. And so that's the reason for the spike in March.
That doesn't make sense to me. I understand what you're saying about property taxes, but how is it that TOT would be 10 times as high in March as it was in February? And all the other ones. I mean, there's something else going on there. It's probably a simple answer, but I don't see it. Do you?
That's a good question. I had to sort of take the numbers from the system, so I will look into that. I don't know why the March number for TOT is that much higher.
Not just TOT. Nilesh, can you go back 2 slides to the graph that demonstrates these numbers? One more. That. So you can see March right there. I would think, when I saw that graph, the very first thing I asked myself is what the heck happened in March? So you've got a huge spike in expenses and revenues. If you're not entirely sure what's driving that, can you get back to us with either a corrected chart and graph or an explanation?
Absolutely, yeah. I will get that. For March, it was unusual.
Nilesh, is this all general funds? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah, also, there was another number in there, Nilesh, that was identical in 2 different months, and it was a big number. I can't remember what it was. I'm not looking at it. Remember that one I pointed out? Did we find that one out? Was that correct?
Property tax in lieu of VLF. So that one showed just under 4 million in March, as well as just under 4 million in January. So I'm still looking at trying to figure out why it was the exact same number.
Right. So anyway, so this is good that you guys are all looking at this because we need to vet it. And but anyway, it's the first view. So we're taking a close look and trying to get an accurate reporting of what the cash flows look like, especially in this coming couple of years. I think it's going to be very important.
I think it's a great chart once you get a leg over the top of it to increase the level of transparency to see exactly what the city's doing on a month-by-month basis and break it down like that. So I think it's a great idea to do that once you get a leg over.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the goal here. We're just starting to work on it. We will get back to you on the spikes in March and the proper adjustments that we need to make, if any. And then this is the trading activity for the month or for the quarter. We didn't have any purchases, and we had 3 redemptions. And that's the end of our presentation.
Okay, there's another portion of this when I was going through the agenda that was maybe the FHN presentation. Is that something that we were going to go through or just go through on our own?
So FHN provides us with the quarterly report. It's not a presentation.
Okay.
It's added on, so I guess you can review it, but it's 69 pages.
Right. Yeah. One of the charts was U.S. GDP quarter over quarter annualized was page 95, and it showed a 34% drop in U.S. GDP for second quarter, and then it showed or reflected a dramatic estimated increase in GDP for quarters 3, 4, and the first quarter of 21. It just seemed like I wanted to know if I was misreading that.
What page was that?
I believe it's 95. That's it right there. You got it.
This one?
Yes. So
Okay.
they're showing the 34.5% drop in GDP for Q2, which we knew about. And then they're showing what looks like an estimated GDP jump in Q3 of 20%.
So
Those are external numbers. Those are projections for the economy at large. I can ask him, but remember, if you're looking at after a 30% drop, a 20% increase is 20% of the smaller number. That's 30% less.
Right.
So
it'd be a 14, still a 14% drop then.
Yeah, but it's an increase off the lows. So I don't know exactly. I dial in and listen to the external, economic activity and all that stuff. I can't tell you those specific numbers, but we can ask.
Okay. I was just
in
curious
fact-
what if they're expecting something that we don't know right now. Understanding that it's a reflection of a bounce off of the 34.5.
Right.
We're seeing in Q2 and another part of the report still a drop in consumer confidence, which is the majority of the economy. So I don't know that we're going to see it come all the way back, but you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
And especially in an election year, it's absolutely crazy what's going on.
but that's sort of an estimate for an increase would be a reasonable guess. I think it's overly optimistic, but it could happen. The 34% decline in the quarter was really I think it was something like an 8 or 9% nominal drop, and then they annualized that number to get the 34. So
That's exactly what happens.
And then
So they nominalize that. Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. We might have some other questions about the FHN report rather than grinding up here. Maybe if we sent those in to you guys, would that be all right?
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And FHN, if we can't answer them, FHN's very responsive. And we do have FHN present one of his macroeconomic reports as well as one of these, quarterly report informations once a year to the Budget and Finance Commission. So
Right.
I always look forward to that. You probably would enjoy that too.
Yeah, that'd be great. And by asking some of these questions a little bit earlier before that report, it'll help us out with some of the micro and macroeconomic trends, the activity that the Fed's taking, where they're being very aggressive in hedging what's going on in the economy, the consumer confidence index, what the rates are going to do while we're at zero or near zero. All of these things will be really interesting to hear about for sure. Any other questions about the treasurer's report then from the commissioners?
I had a question, a general question as it relates to the demonstration and what you guys went over. To me, it doesn't look exactly consistent, as far as what you're showing and what was in our package. So I was curious, can we get copies of this PowerPoint PDF file ahead of the meeting for future quarterly reports?
Sorry, you didn't get a copy of the PowerPoint?
I don't believe I did. Maybe everybody else got one. Maybe I got one. It didn't come with my agenda.
Yeah,
Did you get a hard copy agenda, Jason, or would you get it electronically?
Electronically. Does everybody else have this PDF?
Yeah, I actually pulled the PDF from the website on the calendar, so I looked at it ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a PDF version of it. I did not get a hard copy version. So I did get a chance to go through the PDF beforehand.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll make sure to have it in front of you for the next.
Yeah, I had the agenda and a lot of it matches, but at least presentation wise, it's not the same. So, okay.
Yeah, so the PowerPoint is, we select highlights from the overall report and present on that. And then, of course, you can ask questions about anything that's in the overall report. But the report includes, in general, the administrative report, which is our write-up. And then it includes the FHN investment performance, which also includes macroeconomic trends, and then a PowerPoint. So those are usually the three parts, and you're entitled to all three parts. So I'm not sure where we went wrong, but yeah, you should be getting those.
Okay. As I'm going further into this, I mean, it looks like, okay. In retrospect, I think probably it was all here, but it's not in the same order. If I go all the way to the very end of my package, I start to see some of these slides that you guys were presenting. So I guess it's just not in the same order here as you presented.
It was 143 pages, so.
Right, got it. Okay, thank you.
Some of the laptops wore out before they got to page 143. So.
I think our brains wore out before we got to a page 143. All right, thank you guys.
Actually, I just want to mention, because I know that, with the COVID and we put the agenda on Granicus. If you go, maybe next time what we'll do is we'll make sure we give you the link, and you can actually go into where you can see it on the website, and it's all set up with each report separately. So that way you can see it through there instead of, just emailing it to you. So I'll work with the staff to make sure you get that the next time, because it's all there.
Okay. Again, I see it once I went way deeper, but
Right.
just as a quick example, some of these things are page 128, and I don't believe it wasn't page 128 on the report that you were presenting. So I think it's just that it was presented in a different order in the agenda that we got. It's great. We got all the information here in the agenda. It just was not in the same order it was presented. So that's what threw me a little bit.
Eleanor, are there any comments from members of the public that wanted to weigh in on the treasurer's second quarter report?
No, we have no comments.
Do we have any comments, further comment from any of the commissioners? Okay, seeing no takers, no other questions,
Can I make one comment?
Motion to receive and file the report.
Could I make one comment, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would only mention that given that the yield curve has moved significantly in the last 6 to 12 months, that we would probably expect portfolio yields in the portfolio going forward, at least for the next 6 to 12 months, likely coming lower. Chair Powell said he's going to keep interest rates low, and unless inflation starts ticking up, I believe that the yields are going to be coming down. If you go back to those other slides, right? If you look at the U.S. Treasury curve, everything's around less than 10-year and below. It's less than 60 basis points. So we're going to see it coming down.
Well, the reports are out this week of increased, in some inflation ticking in or leaking into the marketplace, especially in fungible goods like foods, groceries, those sorts of things. There's a big reduction in sales tax from gasoline sales and things along those lines. That maybe it'll counterbalance for sales tax for our revenues. But yeah, as far as our rates of return on treasuries and other securities like that, 100%.
Well, the other thing you have to keep in mind, right, when you have 40% of the maturities very short, 1 month, 2 months or less, you're reinvesting at a lower rate. So you're going to see lower yields as the portfolio matures and reinvests.
I guess we'll be in a position to act when the yields come up by having shorter maturities, which will always be good. Thank you, Commissioner Chen. Anyone else have any comment? Then please ask for a motion to receive and file the Treasurer's second quarter report.
So move.
Second.
Second.
We'll do a roll call then, please. Commissioner Conroy. Commissioner Chun.
Approve.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Samples.
Aye.
And Chairman votes yes as well. Okay, thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Steve, for the report. You can move to the next item.
Yeah. Thank you,
On the
everybody.
agenda, please.
I'm going to sign off, but thank you all.
Was that Commissioner Johnson? I think so. Did you catch that, Eleanor? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
That was Stephen Deals, I think. He left. Is it?
I believe that was Commissioner Johnson had to leave the meeting.
Oh, so
maybe-
did Steve Deals.
Oh, Steve Deals. I beg your pardon. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Johnson, I had you leaving the meeting. You're still with us.
I have two 15-year-old dogs, and when they need to go out, it's time to let them out.
That's very true. The next item on the agenda is going to be consideration of salary adjustments for mayor, city council, and city attorney in advance of March 2021 election. We have, I believe, Caitlin is here to help us with that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, please go ahead.
All right. So good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. It's nice to meet everyone virtually. I'm Caitlin Antos. I'm the HR analyst for the city. Diane Strickfaden, our HR director, is actually out of the office today. So I'm filling in for her to help present this item to you. And so tonight we're considering salary adjustments for the elected positions of mayor, city council member, and the city attorney in advance of our March 2021 election. Back in 2005, the City Council adopted the Resolution 0505-56, which established a process for consideration of future pay and benefit adjustments for elected officials. This resolution directs Budget and Finance Commission to make recommendations to the City Council in advance of the regular election filing period. The upcoming 2021 municipal election will cover the mayor, 3 of our city council seats, and the seat for city attorney. The filing period begins on November 9th, 2020, and any salary and benefit adjustments must be approved by the city council at least 30 days prior. So the city council last gave direction regarding elected official salaries in 2018, which is when they were reviewing the salary and benefits for city council, city treasurer, and city clerk. Back at that time, the city council voted to keep all those salaries at the existing level without making any changes. Relative to the elected city attorney, the city council last gave direction in 2016 to increase that position's salary. As outlined in the staff report, you can see there were 4 increases that were adopted via ordinance. That was a 4.5% salary increase in 2017, 2% increase in 2018, a 1.5% increase in 2019, and then an additional 1.5% increase in 2020, which has resulted in a current monthly base salary of $22,872. Now, compensation for The mayor and the city council has not increased since 2007. So the current compensation for mayor and city council is set at $927.31 per month. The mayor and council also receive deferred compensation in the amount of 12% of base salary, and they're entitled to the same fringe benefits as our management and confidential group of employees. At this time, the staff does not recommend adjusting salaries for the mayor, city council, or city attorney due to the ongoing COVID-19 state of emergency and the city's subsequent structural budget deficit. The sitting attorney also does not recommend a change to his salary at this time. And in accordance with the Redondo Beach Municipal Code, city council salaries can be revisited in 2 years, while the salaries for the mayor and city attorney may be revisited in 4 years prior to the nomination period for the subsequent term. So that's pretty much what I have. If you have questions, I am available to assist.
One quick question. Could you discuss the deferred comp issue? Why was that ever used? What's the basis for that?
So the salary for elected officials is actually set based on the government code. And so there's a specific dollar value that you can assign based on the size of your population. And so deferred compensation is often a tool that's used to help increase or provide additional compensation without affecting the base salary rate.
Do you have anything further on that, Jerry? Caitlin, a question when we're determining the salaries and looking at potential increases, and I appreciate the city attorney and acknowledging the situation we're in and not asking for an increase. Do we do any kind of peer review of similarly situated cities by size, charter city, population, revenues, any other factors that we would use to compare salaries and deferred comp comparisons?
Well, salary surveys aren't required by the ordinance, and since the staff is not recommending any change at this time, and we didn't receive any direction to conduct a salary survey, there was not one completed currently.
Okay, that's something that we would do if there was a look to increase. It's something that we typically would do.
Generally speaking, it's a tool we use to help identify, where we're at in the market and what increases would be recommended. So,
okay, thank you. Commissioner Conroy has a question, please.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, as it relates to council members, are they considered exempt or non-exempt employees?
I'd actually have to double check and verify.
They're exempt.
I believe, I was going to say, I believe they're exempt.
I figured they are exempt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they're exempt, then isn't and it might be different for government employees, so excuse me if this question doesn't make sense, but if they are exempt, then shouldn't the minimum wage be twice the hourly minimum wage? If I look at the $927.31 plus their other compensation, their total annual pay is just under $29,000 or just over $14 an hour, and that doesn't seem correct. Seems about half of what it should be. Like if I hired somebody, an exempt employee, the minimum I would have to pay him $29 an hour. So curious about that.
Their salaries are actually set by the California government code. And so there are dollar values that are assigned based on the population size of the city.
So it's a different set of rules than the private sector is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question.
Can we, I'm sorry, before we move on, Commissioner Conroy, did you say the minimum you could hire somebody at is $29 an hour?
For an exempt employee, that's correct. For yes, has to be twice what the minimum wage is for an hourly employee.
Okay.
And it's slightly different from city to city, county to county, but it's roughly that.
It's an interesting question. I don't know that it's come up before. Are we certain they are employees?
Well, they're getting deferred comp, they're getting benefits, they're getting pension.
Okay. They sound like employees.
Sounds like an employee to me.
Yeah, and they get a payroll check.
Okay.
And then my other question related to the city attorney. I noticed with the city treasurer, if I'm looking at what the city treasurer's compensation was year over year, it actually went down. And so I'm just wondering, if we look at the city attorney, you mentioned the 22,872 per month, which gets you to about 274 a year in base pay. But when you add in other pay, you get up to about 350,000 a year. And then when you account for benefits and pension, it's about $475,000 per year. And I'm just curious, we talked about, doing salary, looking at other cities, what they're paying their city attorneys to make sure, well, it sounded like to make sure we're paying him enough, but, I just wonder, to me, it sounds like a lot of money. Sounds like a lot of money. So I'm just wondering if, when we're looking at the overall budget and these expenses, and we even have a subcommittee looking at ways to increase revenues or lower costs. Is that a sacred cow, or something that can also be a part of the discussion? Is should we have pay cuts, marginal pay cuts?
Salary reductions were not recommended for any other positions as part of our current fiscal year budget.
Well, we're only talking about this one. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, and so at this time, I mean, that's part of why the recommendation is meant to be treated similarly to other positions.
I think it's a good discussion to have. It's not rounded into this discussion, although the city attorney's increases were codified by the municipal code. It's an interesting thing to consider whether or not you want to continue that. In this case, we're not going to continue the increase, and it'd be, if I understood Caitlin corrected, it would not be able to be increased by that adjustment for the next 4 years, and then for city council next 2 years. So we're talking about the increases here, but not necessarily what the total compensation package is. I think that's part of a different discussion, is to review, and then why I asked about a peer review of salaries, whether or not we are competitive, below competitive, or above competitive on some of the higher compensated positions within the city.
Yeah, and I don't want to bog us down on this discussion, but I did see that the city treasurer's pay, there was a reduction over time. And
in 2013, there was a special election when the city treasurer resigned or retired. I don't know if Ernie resigned or retired. I don't remember that. I think he retired. And then at that time, when they had a special election, there was a measure on the ballot to amend our code to reduce the treasurer's salary. And that was approved by the voters. Is that a correct recollection, Eleanor?
Actually, it was to remove full-time out of the charter.
Okay, thank you for correcting that. And while the salary itself was reduced, some of the other benefits remain, such as health insurance and contributions to CalPERS for retirement and things like that for the total compensation package. Mm-hmm. So, are you asking the question, is it possible to reduce the city attorneys or other elected officials' salaries?
I guess that's the question I'm asking, considering the fact that we have to, we've got more expenses than we've got revenues, so we have to look at everything. So I guess, yes, I'm asking, is that a possibility?
If you were going to reduce it, that, I believe, would require something similar to what we had happen with the city treasurer. Is that accurate, Eleanor? Would that, for an elected official, if you were going to reduce their salaries, would that require a ballot measure? Would it be something, it's a policy decision for the council? How would that work?
No, that would be done by ordinance, but I don't know how it works for the city attorney, but it would be by ordinance.
Okay. Specifically for elected officials, or correct?
Yeah, specifically for elected officials.
So we'd have a pretty small barrel to review there if we'd be reviewing the city treasurer, city attorney, clerk, other city elected officials such as the mayor and council. If you wanted to review something like that, we could always visit it at a different time.
Okay, I was just bringing it up. I don't even know how we'd go about bringing it up at another time, but I think that we have to look at everything. So I appreciate your explaining that.
No, the reason I say at a different time perhaps is this particular item is specifically focused on the increases, the potential cost of living increase that's part of the municipal code related to that. Am I relating that correctly, Caitlin, or am I incorrect on that?
Yeah, so specifically, this is related to the mayor, city council, and city attorney.
Okay. But it wouldn't be whether or not we were going to increase or decrease the city attorney's salary. It would be whether or not we're going to look to any other COLA increases such as we had previously.
Yeah, and our recommendation at this point is to keep everything static.
Okay. I think it's a worthwhile conversation though, Jason.
Okay, thank you. And Caitlin, I believe I read in there that it said that there hasn't been any increases since 2017. Is that accurate?
So that's for the management and confidential group, which is closely tied to our elected department head positions. And so that group in particular has not received a COLA increase since July of 2017, although 2 stipend payments were made in lieu of ongoing base salary increases.
And what is the stipend?
So those are flat fee payments that are made in lieu of granting an actual base salary increase. And
So we could say we kept the base salaries the same because we did, but yet they got a stipend in lieu of the increase. So they still got greater compensation since 2017, right?
it's a one-time cost. So then it doesn't change some of those other costs that fluctuate based on base salary. It roughly equivalent over the last 3 years, the total value of it was about 1% for that group.
Okay, thank you.
It's a technique companies use in times when they're not giving raises to give the employees something, and it doesn't have the multiplication effect of their salaries year over year because it's not built into the base salary.
It's in effect a bonus.
Right.
Commissioner Chun, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, so just general question, Caitlin. For, say, car allowances and cell phone allowances, are those under MOU? So, general, are those under MOUs or are those under just benefits?
Typically speaking, those are the types of items that would be identified by a contract. And so, for instance, that is something that could be considered as a form of benefits for the council, for the city attorney, for our elected officials. They're tied to that management and confidential pay and benefit plan.
Okay.
Those are options.
Is there a breakdown somewhere like in OpenGov where we see what those benefits, how they break out?
Yeah, it's in our budget.
It's in our budget.
Okay.
And I misspoke a moment ago, Commissioner Conroy, in just taking a peek back at the staff report now. If you wanted the council to consider whether or not you would have a pay cut for the city attorney, this would be the place to do it. This would be the time. In looking at the staff report there, it states the city charter requires that any changes to the city attorney's salary must be approved by city council at least 30 days prior to the nomination period for a new 4-year term. It cannot be increased or decreased from that point forward until the completion of the subsequent 4-year term. I infer from that it could be decreased and that this would be the time to ask about that or discuss it. So I misspoke a moment ago.
Okay.
So if you wanted a peer review of what the city attorney's salary was, I don't know if that's something the staff would have time to do right now, but this would be the moment where you might want to make a recommendation and see if there's some support amongst the commission members to review that particular salary, see if it's on peer review with other state agencies similarly situated and asked to have that looked at.
Well, my concern with peer review is oftentimes cities will kind of one-up each other, whether it be the city attorney position or other elected positions or even other city positions. So I would be surprised if our surrounding cities were paying drastically less, and in fact, if they were paying the same or slightly more, then I think some people would feel the need to increase the salary, which is not currently the recommendation of the city attorney or the city council. So
you might find that in a review that we're paying less than the going rate.
Well, that's my point. That's my point.
To increase it.
But
Yeah.
But as a matter of practice going forward, we should always have this peer review data in someone's file. So it's not something that information, that knowledge is something that we absolutely should have.
When was the last time we did a peer review, Caitlin? Did you say?
I can't say with 100% certainty whether or not that would have been presented at the time the city attorney's salary was considered last. So that would have been 4 years ago.
Correct. That is correct.
So it seems to me, and this is the only opportunity you said to whether we raise it or decrease it.
So
And for the next 4 years, is that accurate?
It has to be changed at least 30 days prior to the nomination period, which I believe is in December,
November 9th.
November 9th.
there is a city council meeting that's scheduled for October 6th. So any recommendations that are made to council would need to be made prior to October 6th.
Well, I would recommend that a peer review is done then. If this is our only opportunity to do it for the next 4 years, I'm going to make that recommendation. Whether it can be done or not, it's another story.
I think it's a good idea to have the information to present. More information is always a valuable tool. There are pros and cons of the peer review, as you described or mentioned. Is what we find is that sometimes there's some part of our budget that's out of balance, and it's just a matter of a long time and not looking at it. So I'd support the idea of looking at it and seeing if it's in line with where we are and compared to other cities. I would support something like that.
And if we did do it, I would recommend that it be a comprehensive analysis, not just a base pay analysis, but all the other pay and benefits and pension contribution, total compensation.
So Marnie, this is something that's coming up here at the meeting. It's not something that we would normally have gotten to, but it's come out organically. Is this something that you think that the staff would be able to, and I ask this of you as well, Caitlin, the staff would be able to accommodate if the commission advances this to the city council to have reviewed?
I'm thinking it would more have to, because you're looking at it in order to make your recommendation to council, right?
Yes.
I would think that, and I'm not speaking as to whether it can be done in time or anything like that, but just as far as process, I think you'd probably have to continue this item and address it again next month with the comparison.
So continue the item in the hopes that we might have some more information to make that recommendation to city council, if I understand you correctly?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think more information is better, and we want to see where we are in the marketplace, especially in a very tough economic time. We don't know who's going to be in that chair in 4 years. And if I understand you correctly, it would be for the next election for the city attorney, which is, when is the next election for city attorney then? Is it 2021?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Mhm.
So it'll be for this upcoming election. Well, that sounds like a pretty good idea to continue it to me and get the additional information and make an informed decision or recommendation as opposed to firing away here from the hip. Does anyone else have any input with regard to this item?
I would agree to defer it or to hold it up for another month.
Okay, the consensus seems to be then to continue the item till our September meeting and have a discussion with the request that we have the additional information that's been described. I take that as a motion. Would anybody care to second it? To continue the item.
Second.
Okay, do we have any input from the public, Eleanor, on this item?
Let's see, let me hold on one second. Any? No. Okay, so no e-comments and no Zoom. Nope. Not at this time.
Okay, well then we'll have a roll call vote, please, to continue the item for further discussion with additional information in our September meeting. Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Chun?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Chair will vote aye as well. So that motion carries. Thank you very much for the presentation, Caitlin. We'll have some additional information going forward.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you. Ms. Santos, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice. And maybe I'll see you again in September. Thank you. I'm
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
So move on to our next agenda item, which is discussion and possible action regarding the implementation of internal control measures. We have our Finance Director, Marnie Rulin, for this. So Marnie, please take it away.
I will do that. So in your packet, you have a schedule of 7 tasks that are related to internal control measures that we plan to complete this fiscal year. The first item on that schedule is from the roles and responsibilities report that Moss Adams did. And one of their recommendations was to include in the municipal code the financial services department. They noted that it was not there, functioning as it should, but not described in the municipal code. So in order to do that, we'll prepare an ordinance for council's consideration and see where they go with that. The ordinance, we put it on the list because the ordinance has already been drafted. We just need departmental reviews on it before sending it to council. So we should be able to accomplish that. Then the next item is something that came from our last update. We were having monthly updates with Moss Adams, but now in 2021, because the budget for their services was removed for the year, we're not doing those any longer. So at our last 1920 update, we asked them if they would be willing to provide for us a list of tasks that we could be working on independently without their assistance during this year when we're not using them. So one of their recommendations was to do online training for the cashiers throughout the city and then their supervisors. So we plan to do that. And we've actually already started on some very basics of it. and we'll see if we can't get that done once City Hall opens up again. The second suggestion that Moss Adams made when we asked him for independent items was to do training on policies that have been updated. So all the rest of the items on the list are related to the policies. One of them is our grant management policy. That one actually was updated with some recommendations from our financial auditors as opposed to our internal auditors, Moss Adams. So that has been updated, and again, when we have the ability to see staff again, we will do some training on that. After that, as you know, we were working with Moss Adams on a policy project. The two policies for fiscal year 1920 were for internal service funds and overhead, and then on our purchasing card program. We'll be able to finish those up with Moss Adams using prior year funding, since we have those funds encumbered in a purchase order. The 1920 funds weren't fully spent, so we'll be able to complete updating those policies with them. And once they're complete, then we can next tackle the training. So you were hoping to get quarterly updates from Moss Adams. And of course, this year that's not going to be possible. But what we'll do is we will come back quarterly to you with this schedule and how we've progressed, listing that in the status. And I can take any of your questions or even suggestions you might have regarding the tasks or the schedule.
Okay, thank you, Marnie. I'll ask, I don't see any hands. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about the presentation? I have a couple of questions, please, Marnie, if I may.
Sure.
When you, in the staff report, that's a citywide training on updated policies, you had mentioned the grant management control. There were a couple of other items that were mentioned as priorities for Moss Adams. One of them was the Develop Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Program training. Is that something that was among the items that are still being completed under the prior year funding? Or is that going to be deferred through the next fiscal year when we revisit the Moss Adams contract?
That is going to be deferred. That's an item that we do need their work on. The fraud, waste, and abuse program that they had proposed included any abuses being reported to a third party, and then that third party was actually going to report back to Moss Adams, who would weed through that and let the city know about any issues that we needed to work on. In addition to that, they were going to be the ones to do the training. So that's not something, at least as proposed by them, that we can work on independently.
Okay. And this is, I'm glad to hear that we're able to use some of the prior year funding to work through completion of some of these items. Two of the other items that were considered priorities, and I'm going to infer, and probably shouldn't, were the adjustments to the clerk's responsibilities, the treasurer's responsibilities, and the payroll and human resources responsibilities, some of which would have required municipal code amendments. Are those items also then going to be suggested to be deferred until we revisit the Moss Adams contract?
Well, we're taking the first step on trying to get the financial services department into the municipal code. And then we'll take a next step after that.
Okay, can you elaborate on that a little bit, please, Marnie? I'm not sure I understand when you say get the financial services into the municipal code.
So if you look in that municipal code, you will not see a financial services department even called by any other name. And Moss Adams had noted that. They said, yes, the financial services department is assuming the responsibilities that they would expect to see, but it wasn't codified anywhere. And of course, they had 3 places it could be codified. One would be a resolution, which had the least amount of impact. The second would be in the municipal code, having a little more force, and that is doable through an ordinance adopted by council. So that's the route we're taking on this. And then the one that has the most teeth would be to actually have a ballot measure regarding that. But we're taking the middle of the road option,
So the municipal code.
to implement, but.
Okay. Okay, so that's something that we are able to work on independently over the next fiscal year to work on those roles and responsibilities with the finance department and some of these things that were mentioned as a priority, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Samples, you have a comment or a question, please?
So Marty, if I understand this correctly, some of the conversations that we've had, some of the frustrations and things over the last several months, we don't have a place in our charter and in our organization that actually identifies some of the responsibilities and some of the roles that would ordinarily manage our fiscal response and our procurement and some of the other things that happen in your department, only because we don't have that codified in our rules. Is that correct?
So we are, like you said, fulfilling those responsibilities, but you're right, they're not codified anywhere. So this plan of attack we have here of doing an ordinance will codify that within the municipal code.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Did they set up a timeline for you, Marnie, where certain benchmarks that they think it might move towards being presented or discussed at City Council or amongst us here in the Budget and Finance Commission, or is it something that's too early in the process to put a timeline on?
Well, in this schedule, we put timelines for the items, and on that ordinance, we have December.
I'm sorry, say again?
We hope to have it completed by December.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson has a question or comment, please.
It's just a comment. I know. Thanks, Marnie, for your outline and your presentation. I know we've always wanted more, but when we want to start someplace, I think getting, Marnie, your finance department actually recognized as a department is a good place to start, as well as cash. You can't really lose by starting with cash. So while we always want more, I will say thank you for picking this up, even in this time when there's so many things to do, And the
Fewer people to do them.
sorry.
And fewer people to do them.
Yeah, that's the story, right? But now we have unlimited time because we're all at home, and I say that jokingly, but that's the way work goes for a lot of us. But anyway, I just wanted to recognize that during this pandemic, it's something that could have been put on the shelf, and so I want to recognize that there is an effort to move it forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's great. Well said. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Do we have any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Seeing no takers. Do we have any comments from the public on this item, please, Ellen?
No comments, Chairman.
Okay. With that, I'd ask, please, for a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
I don't know if there's an action item for this, Marnie. If we're making a recommendation here.
No, it is just receive and file.
Okay.
If you wanted to make any changes to it.
I move to receive and file.
Do we have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote, please. Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Commissioner Chun?
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Marnie, for that presentation. The next item on our agenda is a discussion and possible action regarding CalPERS and Workers' Compensation Subcommittee report. I'll make some comments. The members of the subcommittee have corresponded. I reached out to the staff to make sure that we had the rules and guidelines for how we would conduct ourselves in making certain that we were in compliance. The subcommittee, the staff was kind enough to forward some information back to us, which was very helpful. We corresponded a brief bit by email and then had a chance to have a telephone conversation with myself and Commissioner Conroy. We were still working with Commissioner Woodham on discussing the item. The initial discussions that we've had are to have myself distill and grab some of the CalPERS information, some of the things that we discussed here earlier, which was, for example, the July payment to CalPERS, how we take advantage of the prepayment option as a means of discounting, for lack of a better way of putting it, some of our obligations in that regard. So I'm going to go ahead and use the information that's been provided by the staff over the number of years we've sat here on the commission, put that together, create a sheet to analyze what we see as our obligations now, what they've been in the past, and what they look like for the future. We want to try and analyze what we have in the way of the number of Tier 1 employees that we have and the number of Tier 2 employees that we have. The more Tier 2 employees that we have, the rationale being that it would bend the curve faster towards bending our CalPERS obligations. And we're also going to, we'd like to put together a list of ideas of different ways of generating revenue or increasing revenue for the city, which we could then discuss amongst the fellow commissioners and then hopefully make some recommendation of a number of those items to the city council for review for additional revenue sources that could then also help prepay or bend our CalPERS obligations. That's the sum and substance of what we discussed so far, or what we've exchanged as far as information is concerned so far. I'd ask if Commissioner Conroy or Commissioner Woodham would want to add anything to that or make a correction to anything that I said.
I think you summed it up perfectly, Eugene.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. We're always welcome. I speak for myself, but hopefully for the other members of the subcommittee, to input here during a budget and finance meeting for anything that you make a recommendation that you like to make when we're discussing this topic as we bring information back. Obviously, we can't discuss it but more than the three of us outside the confines of this meeting. but during the course of these meetings, invite, as we present information, comments, questions, suggestions for us to look at, discuss, or otherwise inquire about. And look forward to that input from everybody if that's available. Seeing no other hands. Oh, Commissioner Johnson, did you have a question or a comment?
Apologize, I was muted. I did not.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. Marnie, is there anything further on this item that we should be discussing right now, or simply that update that I provided?
Just the update. I assume you'd like to continue with monthly updates. We'll put it on the agenda each month.
Yes, please, if that works for you.
Will do.
Okay. I don't believe that we have any sort of receiver file or item for that. Do we need to do a roll call to close that discussion out, Eleanor?
Well, you can actually receive and update your oral report.
Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and accept, please, a motion to receive the verbal report on the possible action regarding the CalPERS and Workers' Compensation Subcommittee. If we have a motion for that, please.
So moved.
To receive the update and continue the updates to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Chun?
Aye.
Commissioner Nguyen?
Aye.
Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
And I vote yes as well. That brings us to our item on the agenda for discussion and possible action regarding commissioner experience biographies. Was an item that was brought up by Commissioner Woodham to better get to know the backgrounds and experiences of the fellow members of the commission. Marnie, I don't think you have a presentation for this, but it has Marnie Ruland. So I'll ask if you have anything on this item.
I don't.
Okay. So the process would be, I suppose, we can go around the room and you can provide an elevator background speech for each of us. I think it's very helpful. I agree with that. Commissioner Woodham had made this suggestion, so I'd ask Commissioner Woodham to lead us off on this item, please.
Okay. Got it. Again, my thought in suggesting this was that I know, just based on the discussion, there's a lot of brain power on this commission, and I thought it would be helpful to simply know that. Some of us know each other individually outside of this, and some of us never see the other person outside of this. So it seems to me to be a beneficial piece of knowledge to have. So I'll take the first stab at this. I've been retired 2 years. Prior to that, I spent 15 years as an investment consultant, working with endowments, foundations, and pension funds, helping them develop their investment policy and implement that. 3 years prior to that, I was chief investment officer for the San Diego County Pension Fund. And I hasten to add that remind you that's the county and not the city. The city is where some folks were getting in trouble. For the 5 years prior to that, chief investment officer for St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri, where I lived before I moved out here. And for the 15 years prior to that, chief investment officer for Washington University in St. Louis. I have a BS in economics and from University of Missouri and an MBA from Chapman University here in Southern California.
I knew we should have waited for that to go last. Thanks.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Jerry, Washington University in St. Louis is a very prestigious private university, correct? Well,
Correct.
Of course.
Yeah, in St. Louis and on the East Coast, they regard Washington U as the Harvard, Harvard of the Midwest, and in St. Louis we regard
Harvard
as the Wash U of the East.
That's right.
But it's an older university. Actually, both Wash U and St. Louis U are pretty neat colleges. So St. Louis is fortunate to have both of those. as well as the Cardinals. Unfortunately, they lost the Rams.
It's sad. Thank you, Commissioner Woodham. That's a great background piece of information for all of us and the public as well. Commissioner Johnson, would you care to please share something with us?
It would be my pleasure. So I've known a lot of you for quite a while, and surprise, surprise, I live in Redondo Beach, but I'm also a native of the South Bay and grew up in Torrance. So I'm a California native, and I also went to undergrad locally at California State University, Dominguez Hills in Carson, and graduated with a BS, Bachelor in Science in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting, and was extraordinarily fortunate as I was the second person from that unknown university to ever be hired at Arthur Andersen. So you want to start off lucky in life, get a job at one of the big 8 or the big 4 accounting firms, and if you apply yourself, good things will happen. I stayed there about 5 years in the audit department, and I specialized in banking and financial services. So for Arthur Andersen at the time, that meant banks, savings and loans, insurance companies. So, Eugene, I know a little bit about insurance. I can't keep up with you, but enough to at one point have taught the introductory audit class at the world headquarters in Chicago in insurance auditing. After that time, I moved to a mid-sized firm, a CPA firm in Westwood. And the advantage of doing that is that not only did I further my audit expertise, but I also learned tax, small business consulting, how to run a company, and all of the things that go with that, and really helping medium-sized businesses run their company. Ultimately, I became a principal in the firm and was the senior technical, if you will, accounting and reporting person in the firm, and took a little hiatus and went off on a tangent with a friend who was starting a company. And I won't say we, but the company went out and sold high-speed ski boats for a couple years. And when you're at a company like that, you get to choose your title. So I was the senior executive vice president. And after the first year, I started to look for my escape path to find a job where I got paid money out of the company rather than putting money into the company. And I did do that. And in 2004, I landed at the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, where I am now, and came in a different role for me, which was the corporate planning and budgeting, and also they being a government contractor, the contract pricing. So I did that for a few years, and it was a great experience doing the corporate budgeting, probably helpful for this work. And then in 2011, I took over the accounting and finance operations, and am happily there to this date. So by way of personal background, I do live here with my wife in North Redondo. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really great. Thank you for all that information. I would think you give yourself the title of CFO as Chief Fun Officer if you're working with high-speed boats.
Well, it was, we had our share of fun, and I did have the honor of buying our model boat. So I had a very spectacular ski boat for a good number of years. It's your 2 happiest day of your lives. I know there's people, there's boaters here in Redondo Beach, and the 2 happiest days of your life are the day that you get your boat and the day that you sell it.
That's what I've heard.
The acronym for boat is break out another 1,000.
That's right.
Say that.
I haven't heard that, but it's appropriate. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
Commissioner
time.
Johnson. Commissioner Samples, if you don't mind telling us something about yourself.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot after that?
It's a tough room.
No
There's
kidding.
question.
So all I can say is I have a friend that owned boats for years, and his only comment about boats was, it's a hole in the water to keep throwing money into. So, that being said, I've been a resident of the South Bay pretty much all my life. I grew up in Hawthorne, and I've been a resident of Redondo Beach and a homeowner in Redondo Beach for 30 years. I absolutely respect everyone that's on our panel here, because we all have so much that we bring to bear, whether we're residents, longtime residents of Redondo or newbies. There's so much that we all have to give. But been here for a number of years, professional experience. I graduated from Pepperdine with 2 different degrees. I have a Bachelor of Science in Management and a Master's in Technology Management. And what that gave me was the ability to look across a number of technologies, ranging from biomed to the things that have been in my core competence for the last umpteen years, which is public safety technology. I've dealt with public safety entities ranging from Redondo Beach, which was one of my early clients, all the way to the federal government in how they go about dealing with technology, managing technology, and protecting the safety of all the citizens. It's been strategic planning, procurement management, and delivery, and making sure that all of those things work. I've been very deeply involved in a number of corporate strategic operations, dealing with public safety predominantly, but I've also managed field engineering and deployment groups with multi-million-dollar deployments, and been very successful in that. So I hope that all of those things are experiences and backgrounds that I bring to bear in this community, and I hope you find it valuable in what I'm delivering here.
That's great. Thanks, Mel. That's really helpful. We always know we can count on you for some public safety input. That's for sure. Commissioner Nguyen, please tell us about yourself.
Okay, I moved to Redondo Beach in 2014. Joined the commission the same year. Moved to the city. We bought a house here. We loved it, and I wanted to get involved with the city. So I jumped on a commission there. Career-wise, I have a bachelor's of a BA in business administration, concentration finance. I'm a senior analyst for a investment company. I specialize in real estate assets in the office portfolio nationwide. I did that right out of college, and I'm still doing it. Different company from when I started. I work for a private equity company that raises a lot of money from pension, and I work for the asset management arm to manage those investments, underwrite, budgeting, and financing. Other ways I work in the community, I'm also a soccer coach for ASO, and then a Cub Scout leader for Cub Scouts in North Redondo. We meet out at Anderson Park. And then also volunteer with my daughter's Girl Scout troop, also out of Anderson Park.
That's great. Thank you. I love Anderson Park. That's probably one of my favorite parks in the city.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chun, please.
Hi, I graduated UCLA Applied Math and worked for Wilshire Associates. Jerry would be familiar with them, consulting firm to pension plans. Did that for 6 years. I was an analyst straight out of school.
Are they still in business?
Oh, yeah. And so I I did computer programming for them in terms of their stocks and indexes. Then I managed convertible bonds for 13 years for a firm in the West Side. And it's for foundations, endowments, pension plans. And then after that, I worked for Plexus, which actually used to be a client of SD Sarah back in the day. And so I consulted pension plans, asset owners, mutual funds on trading for 11 years. And right now I work with Comerica Bank in private wealth management for business owners, high net worth and ultra high net worth.
Ultra high net worth.
That's higher than high net worth.
That I will not achieve.
And I have 2 boys. We actually do traditional homeschooling all the way. I also am a CFA charter holder. I also am a CFO and an elder at a church in Torrance. I also volunteer with the CFA Society quite heavily. And this is my second to last meeting with the Budget Finance, as I did not re-up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for the background and thank you for all the volunteer work. We'll definitely miss you and your input on the commission. We'll have to do something special for you, a virtual cupcake, as it were. Commissioner Conroy, please.
Sure. I'm a 3rd generation South Bay resident. I've got one grandfather who was the second chief of police in Palos Verdes, and the grandfather on the other side was a mayor for Manhattan Beach and also served as a Superior Court judge at Torrance Court. So I've got kind of public service in my blood. After graduating high school, I joined the Navy and was on board a ship at Guadalcanal out of Norfolk, and on a scholarship program. Got money for school. Got a bachelor's degree from Cal State Long Beach with concentration in finance, real estate, and law. And from there, I went on to trade securities for Mayer and Schweitzer, which you never heard of Mayer and Schweitzer, but you've all heard of Charles Schwab, and Charles Schwab was their biggest client. So quite big. And I was working under their #1 trader, who also was a graduate of Cal State Long Beach. I did that for a few years, and then I came back to the West Coast, and I started working with a gentleman named Richard Weintraub, whose mother, Roberta Weintraub, may ring a bell to some of you. She was a LA City Council member for quite some time. And that's when I got into real estate investment, real estate finance, budgeting, and so forth. Went on from there to work with Castle & Cook as their director of finance, raw land development, home construction, golf courses, all the way from Hawaii to Florida. That's what we did. I was there for quite some time. But I ended up, that was in Central Valley, and I have 2 daughters. They were getting older, and I wanted to get back to the South Bay before they got too much older. So came back down to South Bay and I've been back here for about 12 years now, living in Redondo Beach, and most recently working for a company called RTI Properties. Same sort of thing, real estate investments. We also do bridge lending and so forth. And we manage a number of properties, primarily residential, but also office and commercial. We've even got a handful of properties right here in Redondo Beach. And I lead up all of the finance and accounting for that. So that's me.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I want to start off by saying I think this is a great idea. Thank you, Commissioner Woodham, for suggesting it. I've said it before at the meetings that everybody here on the commission is a volunteer who takes time away from their families, their work, their friends, their hobbies, and their volunteer activities to contribute this time to the city. And it's always, my experience has been sitting on this commission, is that it's a great quality group of people, and hearing the backgrounds and credentials and volunteer work that everybody does certainly does nothing to discourage me from that point of view. Awed by everybody's dedication to the commission and their service to the community. It's really great. So thank you for bringing this up, and thank you all for all of the contributions that are made on a monthly basis, and all the times where we don't see each other's faces, that everybody's working on this stuff. For myself, I moved to Redondo Beach in 1985. I had driven my car on the 10 freeway to Santa Monica and got a hotel room and ran into a guy that was working at Pete Marwick Mitchell, part of the Big Eight, that I had gone to high school and college with. And he needed a roommate in Redondo, and he lived in Redondo Beach. And I had never heard of Redondo Beach, but it sounded awesome because it had the name beach in it. So I came to find myself living in North Redondo, across from Anderson Park on Farrell. I went to work for a law firm, essentially being their research and analyst for insurance policies in Century City, where if an insurance policy had a loophole or language that needed cleaning up, then it was my responsibility to research it and clean it up. And back then, you're in the library the whole time. Lexis and Westlaw were still pretty primitive. Or to write an insurance policy and find a way of having language that might be a little bit more wiggly than not, depending upon what it was. Beyond that, I went to go work for an insurance company in their senior referral unit, which was an investigation unit for people submitting fraudulent claims, which was a great opportunity for me because I was going to Idaho for 2 weeks every summer, packing in and volunteering for the Forest Service at a guard station in the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness, where you would get out and ride trails, clear trails, change irrigation, paint guard stations, or handle spotting fires wherever it might be. So that was a lot of fun until I met an insurance agent one day who was always on vacation, and it sounded like a really great opportunity. They needed somebody to help them in their investment advisory. So I went and I took my Series 63 and Series 6 licensing to be eligible and pass my exams. I began working with an investment group on estate planning and investments, wealth management for people, until I went out and set out on my own to create an insurance agency, continuing along with that practice and expanding into writing people's cars and homes and businesses and things like that. Over the course of the years, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of people, and it's probably the funnest part of my job is that I get to talk to a really wide variety of people every day about their risks, their management of their money, their lives, their experiences, and what they're seeing and hearing out on the street. Don't do any of the financial management anymore, focusing on the insurance part of it, which is why I really enjoy coming, listening to people still actively involved in that part of it, and keeping my fingers in the pie and watching the markets and watching investments and seeing everything unfold as I manage my own money and some money for our family. So I am always awed by this. I think this is a great idea. I am up for reappointment, so this might be my second to last meeting as well, where I might get to continue into the future, depending upon the will of the city council. If it's the former, it's been wonderful. If it's the latter, then I look forward to continuing to work with everybody. With that being said, this is a verbal report, a verbal biography. Does anybody want to add to anything or have any other comments? So I don't know if that's a receive and file, but it was a great idea, and I thank you again for bringing it up, Jerry.
And we have no comments related to, nobody has come in to speak or
No
anything.
comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one.
I'm sure they're commenting on Facebook somewhere about whatever was said.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we all work very hard to serve our city council and to serve our city. And I thank you so much for your leadership. And I do appreciate all of the varied backgrounds and knowledge and thoughts of everyone on the group. And just thank you again.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Well said.
Second that.
Go ahead, Mel. Steve?
I second that.
No, thank you, Steve. Our next item on the agenda then is members and referrals, member items and referrals to staff. If any of the members of the commission would like to ask the staff a question or have an item come back at a future meeting, go around the room. Jason, Commissioner Conroy, do you have anything?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Chun?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Nguyen?
I have nothing, but just want to do a quick shout out to Commissioner Chun. You know, great working with you the last 4 years, and good luck in your next venture. And also Chair Solomon, great leadership, and I'm sure fingers crossed we'll see you back.
Let's hope so. And well said. Yeah, I'm really going to miss you. If I continue on, Commissioner Chun, I'll definitely miss your input on the commission for sure, and your friendship at the meetings. Commissioner Samples, do you have anything for a referral?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Just echo, good luck. I hope you get reappointed. And also, Warren, it's been great working with you. If that means 4 years, that's a quick 4 years. So that's how time goes. I don't know if this is more of a question. I wish Mike was at the meeting tonight. In North Redondo, the city came and tore up all the curbs as though they were going to put in, I would say, accessible ramps. So Mel's nodding his head. 2 months ago, tore them all up, left 6-inch to 1 foot holes in the street, put up red cones, and has left them untouched for 2 months. And I remember Mike telling us how the concept was to improve safety. It's just shocking that these ankle breaking holes are sitting there for 2 months. So being that this is the only voice I have, I'm curious to wonder what in the world they're thinking. Al, do you want to add on to that?
I'm sorry, I'm dying because I look around North Redondo and they keep telling us that they're fixing the roads, they're fixing the curbs, they're fixing all kinds of stuff. And yes, there's been a lot of work that's gone on, but it's seriously schizophrenic, and I don't understand it. I've got to believe that somebody has a plan.
It's no less than two months.
It's
Yes.
technically it's a risk management item for finance because that is an exposure to our self-insurance. So it's still part of a worthwhile discussion.
In all seriousness, it is a safety risk. Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get
Well,
some
to
feedback. Thank you for that.
To give you some hope, they did the same thing in my neighborhood, but they did finish. So they'll finish. I don't know.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair Solomon.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodham, please.
I have none. Thank you.
Okay, I have one question, please, Marnie, if I may. I think we were at some point going to talk about the self-insurance fund and the fluctuations in the self-insurance fund. Is that something, I didn't look at the schedule. I think that's on the calendar. Is that right?
I'll double check, but I think it is on for next month.
Okay, perfect. I thought I saw that, but I just wanted to double check.
And it's council direction. And I honestly am going to have to get more specifics on exactly what they're wanting you to look at.
Okay, all right, thank you for us, and that'll be, then you could forward that to us as part of the agenda then. Okay,
Right, yeah. Yeah, it is for September.
okay, thank you. That brings us to our adjournment. Please entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:34. Commissioner Chun? And we have a second.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please. Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Commissioner Chun?
Aye.
Commissioner Nguyen?
Aye.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned until September.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.